Hello and welcome to the MS Improv Podcast, where we engage, where we are mindful, and we tell or share our stories. I am Eric Chase, and we are powered by GEMS. Ladies and gentlemen, and however you identify today, my guest is a fantastic person. We have been communicating for a whole 7 days, mostly through text message, and we were introduced through a uh, a colleague, if you will, a mentor, a teacher, a trainer, a physician friend of ours. And when I heard this story, I had to reach out and ask if my guest would come on and share with us all some of the things that she's doing and why she finds it important. My guest is Crystal Little. She's an adapt health coach. She is a yoga instructor, and we'll get more into that. She is a 19-year paramedic, and she's on the command staff of the agency for which she works. One of the cool things that I have found, um, before it was even brought to me by this person that introduced us, was in EMS World magazine feature story, Nervous System Resuscitation for First Responders by Crystal Little. Crystal Little, I want to welcome you, and we'll get more into the who's, the what's, the whys, and the hows of you and your backstory, your current, your present, and so on. But a big again, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Very
Well,
excited to be here.
well, I'm grateful for that. And for those of us that can't see your smile, I appreciate that radiating and emanating across the screen. And for those of you that may be new to podcasting because you know Crystal or you like the topic and how we're going to title it, I want to welcome you and open yourselves up to the opportunity, this experience that we're going to share in one of the or three of the core values that Crystal shared with me are growth, connection, and wellness. And putting that together with engaging mindfulness and stories, I think we're going to have a very good conversation. And
Mhm.
I want to be open to the opportunity of this experience as well as to each of you. So I can ask you 1,000 questions and I'll ask you one. Why are you doing what you're doing today? And what was the impetus and where was that fall that could have been tragic for you in your life?
Whew. Oh man. Yeah, that's one question, but it's a big one.
Yes.
So I think like most of us, we feel a bit lost in life for most of our life. Like we follow these paths. I end up as a firefighter paramedic. I have no idea how I got there, but I ended up there. Um, and through just life experiences, good and bad, I guess you'd call it the what do they call it? The midlife crisis happened, which was maybe sooner than others, but I was about 35 when I just had this rock bottom moment, a lifetime of um, not knowing how to self-regulate and reaching for things outside of myself to make me better in the moment, or that instant gratification uh kind of took me down a really dark path. And while I was climbing out of that hole, I discovered my purpose. Uh, and I'm pretty confident in that now. But really, I feel like my purpose, like you said, growth, connection, wellness, connection with people, allowing them to be seen and heard, but really guiding others. I had to find all my answers within. And once that clicked, that I didn't need to be reaching outside of myself for anything else, not advice, not a thing, not an activity, it was all within. I realized, oh man, this is really what I want to do. There's plenty of people that are struggling, physically, mentally, emotionally, and they keep looking outside themselves. And my passion is really just to guide them back home, a remembering of who they are, the magic that they hold within. And that's really my passion.
I love that you said looking inward and the magic that we all have. Um, this came up, and I'm going to dare to lead a 3-day seminar based upon Brene Brown's work with the leader that's here for these 3 days, and I'm in day 2. One of the things we were talking about was being chosen, and we are one of only one. There will never be another Crystal. There will never be another Eric. And with vulnerability and or our self-awareness to be able to look inward and start connecting to the things that get us to be the best that we can be, without all these other outside forces. And our granddaughter is adopted, and she's already at 8. I don't want to be a part of this family, and she knows. And at the same time, I've had the conversation with her that she was specifically and implicitly chosen by mommy and daddy to be in our family. And one of the things that I think we fail to do within ourselves is have enough strength in that vulnerability to honor and have respect and have dignity for ourselves, which no one can give us or take away. We just won't, if we don't honor it in ourselves, it's not shining.
Exactly.
So you're doing some amazing things. And I want to highlight, if we can go to the article first, because it kind of
Sure.
highlights your purpose. You had that transformative fall, and then you had that transformational
Hmm.
adjustment, which is giving you the sense of peace, to have the dignity, the self-respect, the connecting to yourself, that oneness, that that ability to
Yeah.
shine and resonate in other people then, and also have healthy boundaries. So if we can go to that article for a second, um, what was the impetus or the precipitating factor for you to write that article, and what was your goal?
So in this darkness that I experienced, right? I had this, my job's very rewarding, right? Working in as a first responder, fire rescue, like it is a rewarding career. But I was in this place where I needed to create this hard line between like my yoga, my meditation, my cold plunging, all these things that I do. I wanted to create this hard line to, like, I had two worlds, and breath work, all these things that I do. And I was like I used to be very involved in the department, teaching, doing all these things. And I don't know if that was part of my burnout. Probably, I'm sure it contributed. So command staff, I've got 8 stations at the time in under me. And I started teaching yoga at the stations. They found out I was a yoga teacher, like, hey, will you come do yoga with us? So I was like, sure. I do yoga with those guys very differently. They're a bunch of 2x4s. They're not very flexible. So I teach very different to them than I do in a studio, right? It's different. I teach hot, powerful yoga, but these are crazy women. These guys, they want to feel good. So mobility, flexibility things, and I would guide them through meditation. I've even guided them through some cold water. I have a cold water, Morosco cold water certification, guiding down regulation processes. So I would start guiding them. And then one of my firefighters, who's actually become a pretty close friend, him and his girlfriend, started coming to my breathwork workshops. And he was like, you need to bring this to the department. And I was like, no, I don't want to. I want to keep this separate. And he was like, I'm just telling you. And then that kind of planted a seed in me, because I was very involved and I was in the committees. I did all the things. And I just started thinking, I said, you know what? Maybe this is time. Maybe I have now like kind of mended a lot of myself, that I was able to now give a little bit more. So I started asking questions, making connections. I had a meeting with my EMS chief and asked him, like, how do I do this? And he was like, I got to think about it. And about a month later, he said, I think you need to write an article. He and I come up through the ranks together. And so when he started talking to me, he was like, man, I don't even know you anymore. We hadn't really talked in like 10 years, like other than passing. And he was like, I think you need to write about what you're doing and what you went through. And he's like, and we'll just see what happens from there. So I never thought of myself as a writer. Turns out I got something to say, and I've been told that I can write. So we'll see where this goes from there. But that's how this all came about. Somebody planted a seed, and I found the right person to guide me to my next move, because I didn't know.
So what I hear, and you were open to whether it was a transactional interaction or somebody that you were in stronger or deeper relationship with, to have planted that seed. You were present, you heard, you received,
Mhm.
however it came into your core, your being, your sense of spirit. Then you were unafraid, and maybe even afraid, to ask how this goes forward.
Oh
But
yeah.
yet you set the next steps in motion. Um, some of the things that you wrote, and I want to read that because that kind of gets to the how.
Hmm.
Can I read a couple of your words for the listeners that
Absolutely.
don't have it? So you're asking a question, first of all. So you're already getting buy-in. And this is how, if I'm going to self-associate with somebody where I'm interested in listening or reading, I want to know that they've got skin in the game, if you will. And you're already
Mhm.
right from the onset of this article. Have you ever been so exhausted that you can't sleep, can't shut your brain down when it's time to relax? Wake up at 3 a.m., wheels turning, ready to go, to be exhausted only by mid-morning or mid-afternoon. You then start asking, do you have sleep disturbances, including insomnia, drowsiness, brain fog, irritability, restlessness, impaired concentration, mood swings? The checkbox were all going off for me when I started reading this. So I know at this point, and we ask ourselves, well, what does this person know? Why do I value their time? Why am I going to give time to them to read an article or listen to them? Well, one,
Mhm.
because you've lived a very shared experience with first responders, veterans, healthcare workers, humans, mothers, parents,
Humans.
fathers, right? Human
This is
beings.
human.
This isn't an occupational hazard. This is a human uh, life that we're dealing with, and COVID is astronomically made it worse for so many people with
Oh
isolation
yeah.
and disassociation. Um, and with that, then you say, you know what? I might be like half in or quarter of the way in, and all of a sudden I hear or I read in this article hitting rock bottom. I'm like, holy hell, somebody else has been there. And no
Mhm.
matter how many times I talk about this, I have to be reminded that it's okay because someone else has been there.
Mhm.
And there are ways out. And you're very eloquent and articulate. And when you say, and from your web page, and then from talking with you, my ways are not necessarily going to be your ways, and yet it's a
Mhm.
start. And if we put one foot in front of the other, our spirit out there to be healthier, to be mended, to start looking at our core self. So because you've asked these questions, you've experienced these things, I'm already seeing buy-in. And then I get this text from Dr. Antevi that says, hey, I know this person. You may or may not know her. She's written this article. And I said, yep, I've seen it. Would you be interested in maybe having a conversation with her? I'm like, yes. So if you're willing to, Crystal, we know how you're in relationship with people, you have a centeredness, a sense of self, and a connectedness to core, which gives you a sense of power, peace, strength, well-being, and all those things. Why did you hit rock bottom? And you weren't practicing these things, I'm assuming, before, or were you practicing some of these things, but just not as intently?
So yeah, I a lot of these therapies came in later. I had been doing yoga for a long time, but my intention behind the yoga was a workout and a stretch. And for like my first few years of even doing it, I would leave before the meditation. Uh, so some of these things, but my intention behind it was very different. Um, I go into a lot. I mean, my diet was always pretty good and exercise was always a thing, but the type of exercise I was doing was another, uh, nervous system stimulant, right? I was like, I had to be constantly stimulated one way or another. The rock bottom, we talk about creating safety so that you can be vulnerable. I wasn't in a very safe place in my home. I was not in a very safe relationship, which added, that was just another thing. Um, I had sold two homes. I was in the process of buying a home. This was like the catalyst. This was the what put me over the edge, because I lived on the edge for all those years. I was never really regulated at all. And I would reaching for all the things, alcohol, this, that, whatever. But that summer I had sold two homes, was buying a home, and on closing day, my homes were sold. I had to go. Closing day, the sellers defaulted.
Mm.
Now I'm 35 years old. I have to pack up my house, put it in storage, and move back to my childhood bedroom because I had nowhere to go. And that was challenging. In the midst of all that, what did I do? What everybody else does. I have a stressful moment. I went out and proceeded to drink and make bad decisions, which then just left me in a deep shame cycle. And I didn't have the support to help pull me out of that. In fact, it was quite the opposite. So not only was I living on the edge and working a bunch of jobs and training and doing all these things and not really taking care of myself, although on the outside it looked like I had it all together, on the inside, there was no dignity or self-respect, or I had zero boundaries. So all of that kind of just came crashing down on top of me. And, in this process, I had eventually found a home and all this, and it was post, like, kind of getting myself back to a normal, like, secure spot, like my root, my home. But that emotional shame cycle was still just dragging me down. And by November of that year, I was sitting on the couch with a loaded gun, and really was just like, in my belief, you take wherever you're at in life, when you die, you take your karma and you take it with you to your next life. And I believe we keep coming back to live our lessons, to learn our lessons, our soul lessons. And then once you've completed it, once you like save the princess, you get to go to heaven or whatever's after this. So that's my personal belief. And so I really sat there and I was like, well, I can take the karma of everything I've accumulated up to this point and just come, do not pass go, do not collect $200, and just come back and probably experience it all again, but maybe I'll be better equipped. And somebody came home, found me, and like, it was like this, he's looking at me and he's like, you don't even want to do this. I could see this, but like, I was so stuck. I was in this just stuck place where I didn't want to do it, but I didn't know another way. I didn't know another way. And luckily I had somebody with me. And then, you sleep, you get good rest. And then, I had already been on a mission to we have an employee assistance program, fantastic. We get 52 visits a year. And I had already gone through other doctors, but I just wasn't making progress. It's just I was a broken record. And at this point, I was just at such a dark place that I'm like, I need to try this again. In fact, I was actually working with a doctor, not through our program, who did not help at all. He actually also created some shame for me, making me relive certain things. So I had it coming at me at all angles. So when I just said, I got to get out of this. And I just shifted perspective, maybe, or shifted my intention with the things I was doing. And I started just searching for whatever I could. And I didn't understand why these things were calling me. Cold plunge. Who wants to get in 30-degree weather? Nobody. Nobody. But I'd listened to podcasts, and I was like, the books and the podcasts, and I was so hungry for the outside information. One of these things was going to fix me. I was going to listen to a podcast that was going to change my life. I was going to read this book and it was going to fix it all. That's not really what happened, but I did get a lot of information, and enough for me to start to explore. I'm very open-minded. I try not to have a conclusion. I try to be open to all possibilities. My point of view can shift at any time, given new information. So I just started looking, and I just kept following my intuition. Every time I was like, maybe I should do this. Let's go jump in some cold water. Let's do sauna. Let's do this breath. Like, I was on the hunt for breath work, but I didn't know what kind of breath work I was looking for. I did all kinds of stuff. Like, nope, this isn't it. Nope, this isn't it. And when I did this was what worked for me. I was like, yep, this is what I needed. It helped really decompress, express, de-stress my nervous system. Like, it's like having a really good cry, and you feel, and you're just like, all right, you feel a calmness. That's what that gives me. The cold plunge would be like the complete opposite. You're invigorated. The dopamine, you're like, yes, but it's this euphoria, and it still allows me to downregulate. So that was a really long way to answer that question, but series of events took me down a deep hole, and then I just had to make a choice and then follow my inner guidance.
Wonderful vulnerability, first and foremost. So I want to thank you, and I see you, I hear you. I want to acknowledge that share, because people are listening, and they are looking for hope. They are looking for answers. They're looking for things, and this isn't specifically the way to find them. And the hope and the goal in having these conversations and sharing these stories is that there's a connectivity to something within self to get you through, or to be that stopgap, or a directional beacon to say there can be, there will be. And you've said, team, firefighters, this person showed up, And we all are hoping and yearning for relational interactions. And because of trauma and guilt and shame, a lot of times we become transactional, not only with people outside of the us, but in our own makeup, our own personas,
Mm-hmm.
and what we expect, and having then an unhealthy biome, an unhealthy me, is the antithesis of anything being received. So, do I need a pro and a prebiotic? Probably. I'm not taking either because to hell with both of them, right? I've failed well enough on my own. I'm not going to need or seek advice, opinion, counsel from anyone. And that's the dark state. And I was there 30 years ago with the gun in my hand right beside me. Um, and the reason I'm still here today is because my son, my child at the time, came to my third eye, my mind's eye, and said, "What will I have to live with and like in that event?
Mm.
In the event you did this, so what trauma because of me not having an answer and me taking my life, right? So that whole
Perpetuates.
perpetuation of the cycle, right, of guilt, shame, trauma. Because what I learned growing up was how to solve problems was to drink the problems away, right? And so we talk about when you had to go home, and I want to go back for a second. And in counseling and trainings that I've done and a part of for veterans or other organizations, we talk about adverse childhood experiences. And for many of us, you having to go back home, even if it was for a temporary time, did that manifest any adverse child experiences, which then compounded all the issues that you were feeling? And it may or may not have. But when you said that, I thought, holy moly, was this one of those other ways to help? The universe is trying to suck you into this negative space because of all these experiences and catalysts that were going on. And now you're seeing them in 3D
Mm.
vision when you hadn't experienced them before, or because you suppressed them.
God, that's so interesting. Hadn't really considered that, but I did have some memories come up that I had suppressed for a very long time, not necessarily having to do with like childhood or parents. It was things that happened in adolescence that I mean, I didn't tell anybody. And I wonder now that you say that, if having to go back home, because it wasn't during that, was it during that time period? Might have been, but there was some in that period of whatever that was, April to November, there was a lot of memories that I had uncovered that or I guess let out. And I now that you say that, I bet you moving back home had something to do with that. Huh.
It hit me in going through counseling and therapy and doing EMDR personally. And then when my therapist asked me to tell me what the general public would say if they were looking inside your living room window, what Norman Rockwell bullshit would they have seen? Or what were you trying to show everyone? Because heaven forbid, you know, they know the truth about the Chase family. Um, you
Mm.
know, and then when I was able to do that, and Daniel Sundahl was on a few weeks ago talking about him making his art to make the real world into a safe 2D space, right? That he has created, and he's processed through creating that art. Um, so I was just curious, and I appreciate your
Yeah.
thoughtfulness in response to that. One of the things that you said very early on, and I like to be cognizant of it, and I know you are, when you say dysregulated. Um, from
Mm.
your words to the listening audience, you talked about the symptoms. That's the insomnia, the restlessness, the anxiety, the agitation, depression. um, can you share with the audience what you're talking about when you mean the dysregulated state that many of us often are in or can get into if we don't put up these
Right.
stopgaps?
So I spoke mainly in the sympathetic state just because when I wrote this, I'm a first responder and I can be a bridge to kind of open the eyes and maybe create a different thought process around this mental health. It's not just in the mind, it's a full body approach. But you could also be the complete opposite, extremely parasympathetic and feeling lethargic and not finding joy in the things you do, like more on like the depression like side of that. And that looks different for everybody, but the dysregulation, when I speak of in layman's terms, um, it just it's like those symptoms, right? I didn't know how to bring myself back to baseline. So we did a breathing exercise before we got onto this platform to have a conversation. But in order to center ourselves, we take a couple of deep breaths, we drop into the body, and we find this sense of calm, this neutrality where you could easily shift to excitement, to joy, back to neutral. Maybe even it's frustration and maybe it's road rage. You can be super calm. You can have, somebody cut you off and life flashes before your eyes, and then let's take a deep breath and we're back to baseline because you realize, okay, that was a scare, but I'm safe and I can come right back. How many of you get stuck in the agitation, the thought, the ruminating thought, or you have an argument with your kid or your spouse or a work colleague, and you're now thinking about that all day long. You keep going back to that event, you keep reliving it, and your body doesn't know the difference if it's actually happening or if it's a thought, because the physiological response is the same. So when I say dysregulated, it's when you don't have the ability to come back to neutral, or it's an extended period of time, like maybe it takes you a day. When I have a when I have a stress dump, there's a lot of physical things that happen. When I have a really big, and sometimes it's taken me, I can be calm, but my physical body will take sometimes a week or two to regulate. But I'm very aware of that now, where I was completely disconnected from my body years ago. Now I'm like, oh, I know what this is from. And I'm not trying to fix it with a thing, because I know my body needs to flush out the cortisol and the adrenaline that it dropped from whatever event happened. So when I say dysregulated, I basically mean, what's your ability to come back to neutral in a relatively quick time frame, given the circumstance. Um, Even my father just passed a week ago, unexpected. It's very sad. I let my emotions go. I can find some regulation, and then it comes in waves, but I can allow myself to feel, and I don't get stuck in it, because I have to remember there was good, there was bad, and I can bring myself back to this neutral state. So I can self-regulate so that I can think clearly. Because when you're outside of the box, you're not going to think clearly one way or the other, sympathetic or parasympathetic.
Whew. Um, Firstly, let me just say my condolences, and that my
Thank
hope
you.
that a light perpetual will shine upon him,
Hmm.
and just honor him in that way. And thank you for taking the time and being in a position where you're healthy enough and going through the grieving and healing
Hmm.
process to make time for me and our listeners. So I'm
Hmm.
I'm I was honored to begin with, and if I can put honor on top of honor, I want to say thank you again for that. So just again, my condolences and light perpetual shine upon him.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. All these things that you're hitting on, and you're talking about like cortisol and adrenaline dumps, and most of us that are medical professionals and people in the world, we experience them, and we're cognizant in many cases to know that something happened. The flushing of them, the time frame that it takes, and we're in a society now where immediate gratification, immediate change, and why can't you do this today?
Hmm.
I have 56 years. How old am I? 56 years of messing up, failing, um, excuse me, doing horrible things and or having horrible things done in my presence to me or around us, right?
Hmm.
That it's I wished I could flip that switch. And my mom used to say, I wished I had a magic wand and make all your issues go away. And simultaneously, if I'm leading this life and learning and growing through it, hopefully, excuse me, that hope of whatever the eternal light and the eternal glory and the eternal whatever that looks like for human beings, right, will eventually happen. And I'm digging in now, saying I don't want to have to repeat this again and repeat it again in order to get that. And if that's what I
Right.
have to do, I want to, but but at the same time, no, it's easier to kind of take myself off this plane and just be like, it's not worth it anymore. And
Hmm.
then I'm reminded about I have a spouse and I have grandchildren and I have other kids and we have a blended family. And
Hmm.
this is a new chance for me to be that better everything that I wasn't 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So if this plane is an ethereal space, or if we're doing it right now in the ethereal space, I just want to honor the people and all the crap that they're going through and just say, we are here for you. With that being said, and we've said a lot, you have done a lot to incorporate these things, somatic breath work, yoga, the cold plunge, the sauna time. Let's dig into those a little bit more because that's one of the things that the article was important. And you had to ask how we can make this work. And then also you said, I'm going to do it kind of with and without permission. Now, how you do it at work is with permission. How you do it at home can be different. And managing that from a professional standpoint, and you're a professional coach and you're also a command staff, fire
Right.
paramedic.
It's funny how they blend, right?
Mhm. So talk about that for us, how when people can't see that the blend can happen in their own lives, you sharing a story of how you made things and worked with people that yes, anded you, they acknowledged your desire to do something and they added their piece to that, and then you have to collaborate and come to the best way to do things, right?
Mhm.
We don't know you. We're not going to yes, but you. We want to give you the opportunity for the experience and still acknowledge where you are, and it doesn't have to be where I am. So
Yes.
you've done these things. So is it the job? We've talked about that. The role of diet. Let's touch upon diet for a minute because I know that you're passionate about that, and as humans, we need to be able to flush the cortisol.
Hmm.
So talk about diet for a second, and then let's talk about cold plunge, and then
I should have looked back at the study. So on a very basic level, when most of us are hungry, we have the term hangry because we get irritable. That alone tells you food plays into your mood. It plays into the state of your mental health. So the vagus nerve, which is the nerve, it's a bundle of nerves really, but that's like the telecommunicator from your brain to your gut, and that regulates your nervous system. We talk about vagal tone and polyvagal and all these things, but that's really the nerve they're talking about, and that runs straight into the gut. Well, depending on the food you eat, you have your gut bugs, and that's where serotonin is made. That's like the feel good, right? It's the precursor for melatonin as well. So if you're having problems sleeping, right, it could be contributing. It could be diet could be a contributing factor. They did. I don't want to misquote the study. I do have it linked in the article. It was a really brief study done in a jail where all they didn't change their food that they took, but they gave their control group a multivitamin and a essential fatty acid. That's it. And in that group, they saw like a 37% decrease in violent acts. Just that alone. There was other things. There was a decrease in discipline and things like that in that control group, which to me is just wild. Like that study blew my mind. Um, but so the food you eat, very important, like sugars and these, and like you said, that you mentioned before, the probiotic, I would say save them because they're not just about the body. They're not just about, having a healthy poop. They're about having a healthy brain. So just on that very basic level, when people say they're hangry, they don't realize it, but they already know food plays into your mood in a big way. So eating those, and each diet can be different for each person. They thrive differently. So maybe that's keto, maybe it's carnivore, maybe it's paleo, maybe it's what's the Mediterranean, but a well-rounded balanced diet and a reduction in processed sugars and, you know, alcohol sterilizes the gut. I talk about that, especially because like you and I were both taught, my father was an alcoholic, right? Reach for the bottle. It'll fix your problem, at least for now.
mhm.
So there's a lot of things that happen in your gut that affect everything in your body. And people forget about that because we're always reaching outside. You can reach outside for food, healthy food.
100%. Yeah, so I just want to reiterate the article, and there's some great resources in the links that you cited. It is the Nervous System Resuscitation for First Responders by Crystal Little. It is in EMS World. So I highly recommend you look at that. And then she highlighted, or there in the writing, that there are some fantastic references. And the one that she was talking about was um, influence of supplementary vitamins, minerals, and essential fatty acids on the antisocial behavior of young adults and prisoners. So
Hmm.
a very, very good read for me and how we can get better. And there's this argument between uh, increasing levels of education for paramedics, becoming paramedic practitioners, becoming this, that, and the other thing. I've been studying, I have 4 extra psychology courses. I just finished microbiology, uh, organic chem, uh, biochem, A&P separately, anatomy and physiology separately. I'm a better human because of those things. I'm a better paramedic, certainly because of that study. And I'm better for this guy, me, because I have a better understanding of how and the why things work. And they honestly take away a lot of those arguments that I can engage in with lack of information and feel like I'm a good keyboard warrior when I understand things at the cellular level and how
Hmm.
a vaccine actually does work versus certain theories that would say that they are and I'm not going to get on that specifically, but
Hmm.
so there are things that matter, and there are things that we need that our body does not make. We need to supplement them. We need to add them to our diets um, in order to be the best, healthiest person we can be. We can't get it all through food, as difficult
Correct.
as that is to hear for some people. So, role of diet is profoundly important. You do yoga. You use yoga to heal, right? In certain ways, and you use it to downregulate the parasympathetic or the sympathetic responses. So, can we talk about that for a few minutes in
Oh,
yoga and what it does? And then I don't know if that touches on the somatic breathing aspect because I don't know how they're related for you.
a little
Um,
bit.
okay,
Yeah.
so if we get on the fringes of that, but the
Yeah, I
paras
can interweave those two.
perfect.
Um, so everyone knows yoga, the poses, the acrobatics. Really the asana in yoga is really just to sit and breathe. That is, if you're doing that, you're doing yoga. But yoga, it does stimulate. So my passion is the hot powerful yoga. I will do more yin stuff too because it was very uncomfortable. So when I talk about these different therapies, sometimes eating the right diet, it's uncomfortable. It's not, I mean, you can make healthy food delicious, but most people have this idea that it's not always enjoyable. Getting in a cold tub, not enjoyable. Breath work, not enjoyable. Yoga is hard. It's hard. It does stimulate. So if you're doing like a powerful class, it will stimulate your nervous system. But typically the way we're taught yoga teachers, right? You warm the body, you bring them up, you have like a peak, and then you bring them down. So you're getting that kind of exhilaration, that exuberance, the energy of it. And then you start to bring them down slowly, right? Where they eventually are laying on the back flat. So it's kind of like a somatic breathing session where we stimulate the sympathetic with a type of breath, a mouth breathing to clear, and then we bring them down basically with a nasal, more repatterning breath is what we call it. So we are not only are we clearing out space in the breath work, then we're bringing in what's your passion, what's your soul have to say to you, like where are your limitations, where are you holding yourself back, where can you let yourself in. And we do the same thing in yoga. I tell people in my yoga classes constantly how you talk to yourself on your mat when you fall out of a pose or you feel like you're weak or you're tired or this is too hard or it's too hot, like, and you're making excuses and you're bashing yourself because yesterday was better or you used to be able to do this but now you can't. How you talk to yourself, that relationship you hold within yourself is the utmost important relationship you will ever have in your life. And I didn't understand that for the first, I don't even know how many years I was practicing yoga. And I get it because I'd look at the person next to me because I'm a competitor and you should not be competing with anybody in yoga. That's how you get hurt. But I look over, I'd be like, and then if I couldn't do it, I'd be annoyed with myself. And that's not doing anything for me. And once I grasped that concept, using blocks or props as assists, you got to put your ego down. and treat your body with kindness, and then talk to yourself, be like, man, my hips today, I can't go that deep today. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to nourish myself, and I'm going to tell myself that it's okay and treat myself with grace and compassion, because that's how I want to have, I want that relationship within myself. I want to treat you that way. I want to treat my partner that way. I want to treat everybody I work with that way. And it starts with me. If I can't give myself compassion, then what does that leave for anybody else? And you mentioned, I am a coach, it's health and wellness coach. It's kind of weaved it way into, now I'm a nervous system resuscitation coach. It's kind of like my niche, because that's what saved me. And I want to guide people, and that might be different for everybody. But even in my job as command staff, I'm a coach, right? These guys, my chief always says to me, he goes, man, these guys spill their guts to you. And I said, yeah, because one, I don't betray their trust. I don't go telling people the things they tell me. And, I see them and I hear them, and I just ask questions, and they feel heard. Whether or not they do anything with what we talk about, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but they feel better when they leave. And someone I go tell them, so I get to coach. I'm a facilitator. I get to be that energy, not just when I'm coaching or teaching yoga, but even at the fire department. And that's been really rewarding as well.
So I love hearing that. And we preface this recording with a conversation on vulnerability. They're witnessing your actions, not your words. And so thus there's a level of integrity they see within you and your manifestations of your behaviors. So you're creating that safe space by allowing them then, because you've already acknowledged it, they don't deserve to give you, or you don't deserve them if you're not being your, we used to say always authentic self. And one of the things I'm learning through this week of this study, Dare to Lead, is genuine authenticity. Because I could be an authentic asshole and be my
Yeah.
be my authentic self, right? And
Yeah.
who wants to be vulnerable around me? Because
Mm-mm.
what person was I going to be 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago? Very good at what I did. But if I was going through that wall, I'd also go through you. If you're bringing me your alms and so they see genuine authenticity in the coach, you know, there's strength in that vulnerability, and you honor that within yourself, so they see that. So if they were to come to a yoga session with you, and I have a fused ankle, and I have a pacemaker, and I have this limitation, and this, and my hand that,
Yes.
they're not going to see you trying to destroy yourself or compete with me to show off.
Mm-mm.
And so that's the same thing in the emotional and self-regulation genre as well. You're going to be your genuine authentic self, and that's going to be enough.
Yes. And sharing with them, right? I share struggles, and I was just very open and I've seen their faces. They're like shocked, because especially when I wrote this article, I got an outpouring of people saying, man, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. And I'm like, nobody knew. My mother was like, I'm so sorry. I should have known. I'm your mother. I'm like, nobody knew. We hide it. We're like cats. You never know when a cat's sick until it's way late in the game. And that's just how we do it. So creating that space of vulnerability, and just like I said, you reminded me, doing yoga with these guys. I have one of my guys, he's going through a lot right now, and he's very like hyperactive, always pacing, always moving, always shaking. And I said, come on, dude, the guys want to do yoga, let's come on. And he's like, no. And I'm like, I've a couple times I've gone there, he hasn't participated. I said, will you please? I said, will you do it for me? Promise. Like you don't have to do the meditation, because he's like, well, I can't do that. I said, okay. When I tell you, 45 minutes in, some gentle movement, I keep them on the mat. I'm not trying to make them do anything crazy. I want them to feel good. I want to, I do some hands-on touch. I always ask permission to, because even though they're probably okay with me touching them, I always ask permission. It's just a trauma-informed thing. Like, are you okay? And I don't, I barely touch them, but just that co-regulation between what I'm feeling, I can pass that through to them. They feel that calmness. And this one in particular, and when I brought them down to the ground and I had them lay there for 10 minutes, I did a whole body relaxation meditation with them, with music and all that. And I bring them back out. And I mean, if you could see the energy of a person, right, their aura, like all of them had just softened. And now I know when this guy goes to run a call, he's going to be nicer. He's going to make better decisions because he's got more clarity. There's less likely he's going to make a stupid move and like hurt his back, because he's just in a more relaxed, calm, regulated state. And like it was such a stark, and I was like, how do you feel? He's like, man, that was amazing. I was like, yeah. I go, you don't got to be scared of it. I'm not going to come in here and try to show off any kind of moves. That's not what I'm here for you for. And you just reminded me of that when you said that, because there's a level of fear there. And the more I do this, the more trust I create with them. And I check on them. I reach out to them. How you doing? Like, you felt a little weird to me today. Are you good? And they'll tell me if they're not, where before they probably wouldn't. It's creating that space for vulnerability and safety, because they need to feel safe first in our battalion under command staff. That's heavy on their mental health. That is heavy. They got to know that they're protected and safe and cared for as a person, and then the firefighter. But I care about them as people first.
Yeah, you're willing to see them as the human being, the person, with everything that comes with.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they were chosen out of however many applicants. They were chosen to be in this role and position. And oftentimes we can forget the whys and the hows we got to where we are, to the
Mm-hmm.
joys and the passions and the loves that we seek, and the why we want to do what we did as a paramedic or a firefighter, in my case, a flight paramedic. Um, with all of these wonderful, joyful things that I've gotten, um, I was still chosen. There was an applicant pool. And a lot of times we forget that because of so many things that are happening around us and to us. We're coming towards that kind of time frame, and I was curious, uh, if it's okay with you. I want to share a couple things, and I got these from your site, and I want to be mindful too of trauma informed. These conversations bring up feelings and emotions, and
Mm-hmm.
as you're listening, um, we didn't necessarily touch on a few. We were very specific on the alcohol and the alcoholism point, but we skirted around other things. So if you're having feelings and you've heard this, and you have an EAP, or you already have a relationship with a therapist or a counselor, we want you to reach out. Or there's 988 if you're uncomfortable with what we've had a conversation about, or if it sparked something within you, it was a
Yeah.
catalyst for a feeling or an emotion. Um, because our minds will take us places that you know are uncomfortable, but also they're that weird safe spot where we kind of wrap ourselves around the trauma because we know it. It's easier to wrap ourselves around what we know. And I
Mm-hmm.
can get through this. I don't want to do an improv exercise, or I don't want to do yoga where I'm having the exact same feelings. I just am not having the consequences, or I'm able to regulate my sense of being when I'm doing yoga, and I'm going to be more calm. Or here we were having a conversation after doing a silly game. But I want to remind the listeners of what some of these things do. And I got it from your website, the happy hormones. Oxytocin, snuggling with a loved one, getting a massage, petting an animal, hugging yourself. Hugging yourself is important. And people ask, how do you do that? And it's very weird. Who's watching you? Hug yourself. It's going to release the oxytocin. It's the cuddle or the love hormone. If you want to release the endorphins, the easer of discomfort. Some people are going to use and diffuse essential oils. Some people are going to laugh about essential oils. That's fine, but don't should on them. Don't should on them. They should have done this. Do you, and let
Mm-hmm.
that be okay, right? Laughing out loud, one of the things that we do, and try to create. The amygdala and the hippocampus and the limbic system, when you start feeling again, it can be overwhelming. And if we can start doing it through laughter or a sense of peace and calm in that tranquil space, or that ferocious space of hot yoga, or the sauna, or that cold bath that you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
let's make it happen because it's going to be safe. We've gone through the traumas, and we know how to watch for those catalysts that are coming up. Moving your body and meditating, it's going to release endorphins. Serotonin, your mood sterilizer. Sterilizer. I hope it doesn't sterilize my mood.
Stabilizer.
Stabilizer. Yeah, thank you. And in some cases, maybe I needed to sterilize my mood because I just need to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but sitting in the sun, it's one of my favorite things.
Mm-hmm.
Getting enough sleep, I don't do that. Using adaptogenic herbs, and I want you to touch on that for a second, and socializing and connecting. And see,
Mm,
again, that goes to your core. We engaging,
yeah.
connecting, being, that's a serious mood stabilizer. And
Yeah.
we know that there's science in leaning in, that action plus empathy is compassion. When you lean into compassion, not only yourself, but for others, we're actually going to be more invigorated. And these
Hmm.
things are going to be taking care of us. But do you want to talk about adaptogenic herbs really quickly?
So the cool thing about like the medicinal mushrooms, people hear about lion's mane and chaga and turkey tail. They all have different purposes, but they kind of work with your nervous system in the fact like if you're some people are more like they're more sympathetic. There's another term that I'm losing right now, but basically the medicinal mushrooms can kind of bring you back down to a space, or they can kind of upregulate. They keep you in this nice cushy calm area, but they work within the body and they kind of give you what you need. So those are the adaptogens for that. So some people are like renal insufficiency and things like that. They'll kind of lean into that. But so those are things like they have teas like lion's mane tea. A lot of people will do that like in the morning. But things so those help a lot.
Thank you.
Being aware. One thing I wanted to touch on,
Yeah.
gratitude.
Mm.
So we're talking about compassion and empathy and all this, but I have to say, like, I have lived, a lot of life. I mean, I'll be 40 next month, but I have had a lot of experiences. I've had a lot of great experiences and a lot of bad experiences. And I gotta say, you live a story of this is what happened to me, this is why I'm the way I am, and all these whatever. But even in those darkness, like what drove me down there, the people that were not supporting me, they exposed in me what I needed to give more love to, what I needed to heal. And without those experiences, I wouldn't be sitting here today. There's absolutely no way and I'm so grateful for the people who have wronged me, the people who have loved me, the people who have supported me, and the ones who tried to destroy me. I am so grateful to all of them. And it's not a toxic positivity way. I'm just really grateful for those experiences because it built me. And I had to build me, right? Without those experiences, I wouldn't have seen the cracks that needed, a little bit more love. And the work is never done, but I have so much gratitude for it. And I think that also plays into the healing. You got to have gratitude for where you've been. Like, I'm grateful I hit that rock bottom. I know what it's like. It's given me this dialogue with people that I would love to reach. And without that experience, maybe I couldn't.
Yes, thank you very much for saying that. Part of the lesson and the learning over this 3 days that I'm doing with the Brene Brown Dare to Lead cohort is that gratitude piece. And I love that you mentioned it's not toxic positivity. And Daniel Sundell and I talked about that several weeks ago. It truly has to be um, that sense of gratitude for that worst place and that person that literally caused you grievous harm and trauma, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all those things, maybe simultaneously in that action and behavior. Because otherwise, as one person mentioned in the cohort, I would just say F it all, right?
Yeah.
Because if I can't honor that for where I am today, I'm going to get the gun again. I'm going to
Yeah.
take the pills again. I'm going to just start drinking again to a point where I'm going to be incoherent and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
We numb.
We numb until the guilt and shame cycle comes back in.
Yeah.
And if I
And when you're
can,
numb, you can't feel the good and you can't feel the bad. You keep yourself in this very narrow window of feeling. We numb. So you got to feel it all.
yes. Before we end and before I give you the outro or give the outro and you a couple minutes to share, dopamine was the other thing I wanted to, and we
Mm.
talk about it. And, completing a task. There's this awesome commencement speech by like a 3-star general, and he said, "Get up
Oh,
and make your bed in
make
the
your bed.
morning."
I
Right?
love that one. Yeah.
Complete it. It's completing a task. It literally is a uh, dopaminergic catalyst. Right?
Hmm.
Completing any task.
Hmm.
Do yoga once. Experience that. Do our improv stuff. Experience it. Listening to music. Celebrating small wins.
Hmm.
Big thing here, though, listeners practicing self-care, and that's kind of the impetus for the entire conversation that we've had,
Hmm.
right? For you writing the article, for you wanting to connect further with people, so you could actually truly be engaged, to
Mhm.
meet them at their most vulnerable, to meet them where they are. So with that being said, Crystal, before I do our ending and conclusion time, what would you like to, after this about an hour that we've shared time and space with, like to kind of leave our listeners with?
Well, there's no right way to do this. There's no wrong way either. I encourage everyone to explore different things. That could be, you know, getting more connected. I was very isolated, right? So it started by getting connection with healthy people. Um, Maybe that for you is just simple going for a walk and pay, not with the music, not with a book, just paying attention. I tell people I'm like the funny neighbor. I peek in people's backyards to check out their landscape to see like what I want to do in my yard, but I'm very present with when I'm my walking. But some people are like, oh, I can't do cold. I can't do this. Well, go for a walk. Spend some time outside, get some sunlight. Maybe you try certain things and you're like, nope, that didn't work for me, but maybe don't put it out of the realm of possibilities for later. I don't do all of these things every day. I wish I could, but that's a job. I don't have that kind of time. So I recognize, for me, the cold plunge, I can do that in 2 to 3 minutes real quick. And that's a big dopamine hit. I mean, elevated dopamine for 6+ hours, 200%. Like it's significant, mood elevating and invigoration, but that might not be for you yet. Maybe it's sauna, there's a ton of other things. Float tanks are another thing I also incorporate. I didn't even touch on that. Um, just don't give up on yourself and know that the answers are within. So whatever resonates with you, like explore it. And if it's not for you today, come back in a month or 2 or 3 or 6 and explore it again, because as you start to regulate, you can handle more. Like we run short on resources when we're dysregulated. I was a crazy person. I was so reactive. Now I've got a lot more space. So as you do practices, as you do these things, come back to the ones that may have seemed too much for you and try them again. Because as you develop more vagal tone, as you become more regulated, you'll have more space.
Wow. Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. What I heard and felt was there is a structure. You've given yourself boundaries. You've created space for a fluidity versus a rigidity, which is creating the
Mm-hmm.
reactionary response. You're giving yourselves the opportunity to respond, and that response might be something that was contrary to who you were
Oh,
yesterday.
oh
And,
yeah.
and, and that's the best part of what these processes and steps and help and tools and exercises can do. We're not, you and I are not asking for them to change who they are overnight.
Mm.
We're just asking you to recognize one thing, that if you could make the response incrementally, infinitesimally better, that you're not going to put yourself in that guilt shame loop again as badly tomorrow, and you're going to go there tomorrow, one little step at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
if part of it's making amends to yourself and being grateful for yourself that you've
Mm.
endured all of this pain and this suffering, some of which you've caused yourself,
Mm.
but most of which has been what you've been involved in,
Yeah.
or had to suffer. We get that. So um, I'm grateful for you and your time and your share. So I want to just say that, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, however you identify, and we honor that. This is and has been the EMS Improv Podcast, where we have engaged. We've very much tried to be mindful, and we've definitely shared and told some stories. I look forward to continuing whatever this will look like relationally for us. In the, just my hopes and the interactions that we are relational. We are, and you're very specific in saying this in that article. We know everything doesn't work for everyone, and it's not a one size fits all. And you've said that, and we also honor that. We do know a way out, and we do know ways that can help, and we are connectors as well. So if we aren't the ones that you can approach, at least for us to show you some tools, tricks, skills, we can share with you people that might be better for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if reaching out isn't because you're reaching out because Eric, I like you, that's cool. You don't have to like me. And also I want to help get you to the person or persons that will resonate with your spirit. And I believe that Crystal, you're going to say or feel the same way.
Absolutely.
You
You're
might
your
not
own
be.
guru. You might just need to find the guide that will bring you back home to yourself.
So that is fundamental to you. And I want you to repeat that again and then let people know how they can contact you or through your website, please.
Yeah. Just remember that you are your own answer. You are magic. Every single one of you out there, you are magic. The magic's within. You just have to remember it's there. Maybe you need someone to help you find that within. You can find me at alittlereset.com. Anyone needs a little reset, right? That's it. It's cute. It's my name. And also Instagram, _little_reset.
You
And
are
LinkedIn.
magic. And on LinkedIn,
Everyone's
yep.
magic.
You are magic. And as I say, and try to end these with, may a peace which surpasses all understanding be with you and each one of you out there. And until
Mm,
next time, thank
yeah.
you. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.